Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another Hot Toys Star Wars The Mandalorian 1/6 scale figure unboxing and review. Today we're taking a look at Paz Vizsla, aka Heavy Mando. Now I got mine at a discount from Pop Collectibles. As always, do your own research, make sure you are comfortable before buying. I have popped the link to their site in the description below, along with the discount code Justin's Collection, for 5% off your order if you do decide to buy from them. While you're down there, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button, so you're notified as soon as a brand new Hot Toys Star Wars figure review goes live on the channel. As for the box art, it does look very similar to what we saw the first time round, because for those of you who don't know, this is Hot Toys' second attempt at a heavy infantry Mandalorian, aka now we know his name is Paz Vizsla. This time he comes with some new accessories, which are pictured on the front of the box, and yes, that is an image of the figure himself. We have a metallic foil Star Wars logo, a two-tone banner with this cityscape in the blue parts, as well as another product shot of Heavy Mando just off to one side. Sorry, I meant Paz Vizsla, please. Don't flame me in the comments. I know dude has a name, but we have been calling him Heavy Mando for the longest time, so it's going to take me a minute to try and shake that. We have the wraparound banner continuing to, well, wrap around, and another product shot of Paz Vizsla. Then around the back, pretty boring honestly, just some warnings and legal information. Once again, Hot Toys continue to hide their best artwork on the inside of the box, where if you're walking through a store just looking at the figures on the shelves, you're not really going to be able to admire this piece of artwork that may just entice you to pick up the darn thing. We have an image of Paz Vizsla firing his triple-barrel Gatling blaster, as well as a Mythosaur skull in the background. Initially, at the offset, I wasn't super excited about getting another Heavy Mando. I am perfectly fine with the original. But then, curiosity got the better of me. I want to find out if there are any differences on his armor or with his accessories as compared to the 1.0. And you can bet we will, of course, be doing those comparisons throughout the course of this video. First in-hand impressions? He's hefty. I forgot how sizable this figure was. What we are going to do now, though, is get all of his accessories laid out in the light box and take a closer look at everything he comes with. Starting off with the display base first, which is actually one of the main differences between the Heavy Infantry Mandalorian and Paz Vizsla. Instead of giving us just a 2D image of sand up on top, they've given us a classic Star Wars display base mold. There is so much depth here. We've got this top layer and it casts shadows on the bottom layer inside the display base. There's some silver speckling on the surface and on the edges to make it look slightly weathered, Star Wars and Paz Vizsla on the etched nameplate, a bendable flight pole, plus a spring-loaded and foam-padded waist clamp. Seeing as though we know this style of base is compatible with a crotch grabber, I would have liked to have seen that here as well. Going forward, I think both options are necessary, a flight pole and a crotch grabber. He does come with his vibro blade, it's made of plastic, and do be careful of this teeny tiny wire on the outside because it does feel quite fragile. It's mostly cast in gunmetal unpainted plastic. There's a little bit of silver and yellow on the hilt though. Every time we get a Mandalorian figure with a jetpack, these are the go-to blast effects. They just plug into the ports and you will see that a little bit later. They're cast in translucent plastic, they're quite prickly, there's some shading over the top with darker orange towards where they would come out of the thrusters, then they get a lot lighter towards the spikier ends. There's a lot of texture on the surface, and when you plug them in, they can look quite convincing. Depending on how you light them, of course. Okay, so this is the actual one real new accessory with Paz Vizsla. It's his energy shield. You can swap this out onto his gauntlet, and for those who are wondering, no, it's not compatible with the first release. I did try and pop it on there, remove this panel from his gauntlet. It's impossible. It's glued down, it's fixed in place. This is only compatible with the new figure. Technically, I treat this more so as part of his outfit rather than an accessory, but you do get his jetpack plus his massive blaster. And lastly, a full array of hands. The exact same array of hands that we got with the Heavy Infantry Mandalorian. The gloves themselves have a ton of wrinkling and texture sculpted in, plus there's some lighter, almost brown dry brushing over the black so you can see all of that sculpt work. The armor plating is asymmetrical. They are different shapes from one side compared to the other, and different colours with different styles of weathering. So first off, we have a saluting hand and a gripping hand. They have gone with pairs for the most part, so you get another gripping hand and a closed fist. A trigger finger hand, another closed fist, this time for the right side, and two sort of relaxed, open palms, splayed out finger hands, already installed on him out of the packaging. What we are going to do now, though, is get Paz Vizsla himself out here. Standing straight up and down in the lightbox, no crazy poses, or accessories, or anything like that. Stop me if you've seen this before, because this guy is virtually identical to the first version. Yes, there are a couple of changes with the paint applications and even the outfit that we will discuss in the comparison segment. For now, just know that if you have the first one, you kind of already have this guy, except for the different display base and the holographic shield. Everything that the 1.0 does well, this guy does well also. He's big, he's bulky, he's proportionate, and the armor plating is super well sculpted and beautifully painted. Up close and personal, kicking things off with Paz Vizsla's helmet. I have always loved this design for a Mandalorian bucket. It's so freaking unique. The color scheme especially, this dark blue then accented with the lighter blue, the reddish brown, and the yellow. It almost screams construction worker or industrial Mandalorian. He's got this silver dry brushing and chipping on the high spots and the raised edges. You have some gunmetal poking through where it looks like the dark blue has just been chipped away, exposing the raw Beskar underneath. And there are washes in the crevices. But my favourite detail has to be the visor. Instead of going with just glossy black paint, this is a separate piece of plastic inset into the T-visor. So that means there is an actual gap around the edge, making it look way more realistic. You do have the flight suit continuing up underneath the helmet, but there is no head sculpt under there, which I'm okay with because we don't even know what Paz Vizsla looks like. He has not taken his helmet off yet in The Mandalorian. Nor do I think he's ever going to. He's way too scared of the armorer and what it would mean if he did take off his helmet. So, being as indoctrinated as he is, the helmet I reckon is staying on. The jetpack though doesn't have to, you can remove it if you so choose. And the backplate is weathered underneath the jetpack, so it's not like you're missing detail if you remove the jetpack other than, of course, this piece itself. Now, to hook it back on, you want to sit it on the ledge that it's supposed to slide onto, then push it down and lock it in position. The jetpack, just like the helmet, is unique to Paz Vizsla. It's wide, and you have the twin thrusters down below, with this multicolored heat treatment to make it look like it's been singed as it's been heavily used. There's silver dry brushing, washes in the crevices and the grill work, plus some speckling of dirt and grime to dull down the yellow a little. There's also some speckling on this hose piece that is wired, but it's done in silver on the gunmetal, so this also looks like it's been bumped around and scratched as this dude's been running around the battlefield. You can holster the triple-barreled Gatling blaster thing on his jetpack, but it's not super easy to do. It does sit on these two pins. There's a little hole up the top, and there's a peg port that the bottom one pegs into. This is something I missed the first time round when I reviewed Paz Vizsla. You want to pull this piece out, just be careful of it. The instructions do say that it is relatively fragile. Then you can plug it in and push the bottom one into the blaster to lock it in position. Stupidly enough, I haven't been using the top one on my 1.0 Heavy Mando, and it always frustrated me how loose the blaster was. It turns out, I've been doing it wrong the whole frickin' time. It's fine, sometimes you miss something the first time round, and thank you Hot Toys for giving me the opportunity to now correct myself in this 2.0 review. Now you do get some thruster effects that you can plug into the jetpack, but be very careful of the spikies at the bottom. They make them look way more realistic, but also way more dangerous, because as you're pushing them in, you're getting spiked constantly. It's not like you can grab it up here, because it is quite slippery. Your hand will just go right to those spikies. Take your time, maybe rotate it as you're sliding them in. Is this something I'd ever use with my Heavy Mando? No, I don't think so. I'm personally going to have him planted on his display base, firing his blaster. Back around the front, there is a lot to digest with the armor, but let's start off with the flight suit first. There's this lighter, more tan colored layer, and then there's the grey with white stitching layer over the top of that. Having multiple layers of fabric and having it be padded the way it is does mean he's going to be a little bit more restricted when it comes to poseability. You'll see what I mean when we get to articulation. So the armor itself is asymmetrical. On this side, the gauntlet is the reddish brown with this little dongle. Nice pop of red on there. That is a separate piece though, so do be careful. Whereas on the other, you've got this additional cannon or flamethrower attachment. I think it's a flamethrower because, as you can see, this hose does make its way up his flight suit, and I reckon it connects to the fuel reservoir in his jetpack. You also have a pop of yellow on the underside of this shoulder pad, and a mythosaur skull up top. Whereas on the other side, a little bit of carbon scoring where he's been blasted in the shoulder, and these fins. For the main chest armor, also asymmetrical. Got the typical Mandalorian diamond style piece in the middle, some grill work, and some little greebly bits and pieces over the top. Okay, you're sitting down. Are you all ready for this? Because this is the killer app for Heavy Mando 2.0. This is apparently the reason why you'd sell off your original and pick up this new one. I'm being facetious, of course. I don't think this is really a reason to do that. This is the one new addition to Paz Vizsla. You can remove that panel, then bring in his translucent blue shield and plug it in place. I'm not joking, this is the one key new feature for Paz Vizsla, as well as him now actually having a name, of course. You've got these concentric circles, some raised bits to make it look like an actual energy shield. It's optically clear so you can see directly through it, and there's some white shading around the edges. Do I think that this is a reason to go ahead and sell your 1.0? Not really. I personally see it more as a value add. If you missed out the first time round, you are now getting access to Paz Vizsla, plus you're getting a nice little bonus accessory. Hey, who's to say that you don't have a specific pose in mind that requires that shield? And then, yes, it would be worth it to you. It's all down to personal preference. Now, the main belt is made of pleather, but over the top of that, we've got all these sculpted plastic pieces, including the pouches. They are quite convincing, actually. The leather grain, the stitching, and the subtle wrinkling here and there does make it look like they're also made of pleather. They aren't, they're sculpted plastic. Now, this skirt piece is tattered along the edges, and it's much brighter compared to the 1.0. Coming down to the legs, there is so much asymmetry to look at here. The thigh armor is different left to right. This one sticks out a bit more at the top, but it sits down lower, so it exposes more of this lighter colored stitched padding. The codpiece is on Velcro, so it's removable, and everything can be adjusted and tweaked. It's either on elastic strapping, or it's just held in place by friction. But it's not just the sculpt work that's asymmetrical. It's also the color scheme. Got yellow used as more of a primary color on the right leg versus the left leg, it's an accent color. I think everything works. Even though on paper, yellow, blue, lighter blue, the reddish brown, the lighter tan colored outfit might not be that appealing, somehow, in practice, it does work for me. Now, they've also added all of that weathering and battle damage on the surface right down to his massive armored toe caps. This is a split-cut boot design, and these pieces are free-floating. So I think for articulation, they should get out of your way just fine. They've also added that leather grain texture on the main body of the boot, and there's some sculpted tread. The instructions do warn you to be pretty careful when you're installing the blade because it is made out of this quite thin, brittle feeling plastic. The easiest way I found to do it is to wedge it in around the front, then you can pull it back and pretty much put it wherever you want it to be. Trying to wedge it along the side, his calf bulges out down below, so that's going to be much harder than inserting it right around the point where the biggest gap is. While we're here, we may as well discuss his huge frickin' blaster. You can hinge out this handle, and you can actuate this back one up and down. For a quick side-by-side comparison, this to me is like that Office meme. Corporate wants you to find the difference between these two pictures. They're the same picture. In reality, of course, there are a couple of differences. The battle damage is more pronounced on the new one. There's that pop of red on his right gauntlet, as you can see with the figure on the left, as compared to the original on the right, it's simply not there. And the brown material for that sash underneath his belt is more saturated, plus it's got those pleats or wrinkles stitched into it, whereas the original one doesn't have that, it's one flat piece of material. Are those differences plus the holographic shield enough to warrant selling the original and picking up the new one, even though all of the armor plating is the same and the bodies are identical? For me, no, I don't think so. For you? Well, only you'll know that. As collectors, we are a kind of crazy bunch. We do things that sometimes don't make a ton of sense, so maybe that shield is going to be worth it to you. Next to Chrome Mando, yeah, Paz Vizsla is significantly taller, exactly as he should be. Going over articulation on Heavy Mando, I'm fully expecting it to be the same as what we saw the first time round. Starting off with the head sculpt, it's on an articulated neck, with a double ball peg up underneath the helmet. Looking forward to there, looking up to there, just enough range for a convincing flight pose, swivel, and pivot side to side. The shoulder pads are on Velcro, so if you go crazy and they do pop off on you, that's fine. Just dial in the pose, then reinstall them back on the shoulders. Going up to there on ratchets, going forward and back, also ratchets, butterfly joint at the shoulder that hinges up and down. Swivel at the bicep, ratcheted double bend at the elbow, but you only really get to 90. And then for the wrist peg, it's a hinge and swivel. There is a significant amount of padding, armor plating, and just stuff in general on the upper torso. Crunching forward is limited to about there, even though this piece is slightly softer. Going back to there, swivel, and a bit of pivot side to side. The legs are on ratchets going forward to there, but if you want a little bit more range, you can rotate the armor, and then they will go slightly more forward. They will go out to there, also on ratchets, but more clicky ones. Plus there's a swivel at the upper thigh. Double bend at the knee, ratcheted, going just past 90, and then a split cut boot design with a double ball peg for the ankles. These pieces should move out of your way. Good for forward and back, swivel, as well as ankle tilt. Moving on to the 3 cool and 3 annoying things. The first annoying thing is, if you have the first version of Heavy Mando, I'm gonna be honest, there is not much of an incentive to pick up this new one, because you are getting more accessories for Paz Vizsla with the upcoming IG-12. So unless you really want this clear shield attachment for the gauntlet, I don't think it's worth the upgrade. The second annoying thing is, damn you Hot Toys in your pleather. They've still managed to sneak some in here on his belt. The third annoying thing is, once you install the hose for the blaster into the jetpack, it is very difficult to remove. It's on this clear plastic mushroom peg, and I'm worried that if you do remove it and plug it in multiple times, this is going to break or crack and no longer be functional. The first cool thing is, you now have a second opportunity to get Heavy Mando. If you missed out on Paz Vizsla the first time round, well, now's your chance to grab him. I know I just said this wasn't worth the price of admission, but the second cool thing is the holographic shield. It's a new accessory that we didn't get the first time round, which means this guy isn't just a straight reissue. Same thing can be said with the finish on the armor. It is slightly different, so the third cool thing is the new one is a little bit more weathered, and the blue has been toned down a touch. It's especially noticeable on the mandibles for his helmet. The original on the right is more saturated. Wrapping up on Paz Vizsla, aka Heavy Infantry Mandalorian. This guy is just awesome. He's so big, he's so imposing, he has a ton of presence. And he was voiced by Jon Favreau. How can you not have Jon Favreau as a Mandalorian in the collection? And now we have a second chance at picking him up. If you missed him the first time round, you get everything that you got with that 1.0, plus a couple of little extras thrown in. The holographic shield, slightly better paint applications, some tweaks to the outfit, and a different display base. So now's your time. There's no point waiting any longer. This is the Heavy Mandalorian for you. I do not think there's going to be another version. For a while, at least. Maybe until we eventually see him take his helmet off in the show, and I'm fully expecting to see Jon Favreau underneath that Mandalorian bucket. So maybe there is hope for a future third version. I wouldn't chance it. This guy is more than capable of filling up that Heavy Mando size spot in your Mandalorian collection. Now, I got mine at a discount from Pop Collectibles. As always, do your own research, make sure you are comfortable before buying. I have popped the link to their site in the description below, as well as the discount code Justin's Collection, for 5% off your order if you do decide to buy from them. While you're down there, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button, if you like the sound of seeing your name in the end credits of my reviews. Like, comment, and subscribe. We'll catch you in the next video.